Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I'm your host, Royce Jones. A lot has happened since our last program, and we are very excited to be back with you this evening to talk about the stories that matter with the people who care. The One Hood Power Hour is a news program that's meant to give you some updates about what's been going on around Pennsylvania as we talk to people who are in the news so you can understand how you're impacted and what you can do to make sure that your community has what it needs. Remember that you can ask questions directly to our guests. Just type them in the chat and we'll do our best to get to them. One Hood Power focuses on building power by reaching out to our communities who have been traditionally excluded, forgotten, and under-resourced. We specifically focus on the people, policies, and platforms to improve the quality of life for our Black, people of the global majority, disabled, queer, youth, immigrant, and Muslim communities. On tonight's show, we wanted to talk a little bit about the C word, cancer. According to the Allegheny County Department of Health, cancer is the second leading cause of death in Allegheny County, with a death rate which is slightly higher than the national average, and lung cancer being the most prevalent. Cancer accounts for 18% of all deaths in 2020. The cancer death rate has actually declined, but the county's rate, which is 150 per 100,000 people, was 4% higher than the national average, which is 144 per 100,000 people. And that data is from 2020. A lot of numbers there, and it's all going to make more sense as we put it into perspective as our conversations roll out this evening. Our first guest is known as a curator and creative in the arts. However, the other week, she became known as a mother of a child with cancer. Taking to social media, she announced the cancer diagnosis of her child and reached out to the community for support. So to talk a little bit about this story, let's everybody welcome Tara Fay. Hi, Tara. Can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay,
I was just adjusting because now I can see myself. And
you're good. Okay. That's good. No, that's all right. Take your time. How are you? How are you guys doing?
We're good. I think more than anything, we feel really fortunate. And, I think it's been a month now since her diagnosis. And we're in a good space and we are looking forward to the next steps in her treatment and just, getting through to the other side. And she's amazing and like so strong and so brave. And she's my biggest inspiration right now.
How old is your daughter?
She's 9.
9 years old. And it seems like, she's not just an inspiration to you. She's obviously an inspiration to many other people. It seems like a lot of support has been pouring in for you guys, right, since you took to social media.
Yeah, for sure. In a way that I keep saying that, I'm just blown away. And I use social media, for self-promotion, but it's also kind of like a diary, an archive. So, people that follow me have seen me through so many life changes and they've seen my kids grow up. And I fear nothing. Anyone who follows me on social media, I have posted some really audacious things over the years. And we had been in the hospital for over a week. We had her diagnosis. We had an idea of next steps. And I was like, Neon, I feel like I should post about this, but what do you think? Because one thing I'm very conscientious of is as my kids have gotten older, I realize how important autonomy is. So if I'm posting things about them at this point, now it's with permission. They get to screen posts before they go up. I'm very intentional about that because for years that was less of a concern. And, you just post them all the time and you're not thinking about a digital footprint. But, in the digital age, I do want my children to maintain some of their privacy. So I was like, we should announce this. What do we do? What do we say? And I have never been as nervous about posting something like in my life.
That's
But the whole
powerful.
time, she was in the hospital and we were like in an uncertain space, I'm posting nothing but like pictures of her on my stories. And then our family, like in Ohio, they're like, hey, is something going on with Neon? And I'm like, oh, I have an entire network of people that I should, just let them know. And one thing Nene loves is like seeing how many people will like comment on posts about her, or because she has fans. She is a person.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Let's just post this and ask people for words of support, because like that's the most important thing right now. And I don't even think she really has a handle on like so much love and support, and just like people I haven't spoken to in years were on that post, and so many people were reaching out like, what do you need, what can we do? And I'm so grateful that she is being uplifted by so much community. So yeah, just practicing gratitude. And in the arts there is sort of this idea of like, silent competition, like we're all in competition for whatever reasons, right? And sometimes like I don't feel the support, and I keep
Yeah.
saying how like none of that ever mattered, because when I needed that support for my child, it was there. And she's more important than like anything I could have ever done. So I'm like, this is it. Like all of the things I may have felt like I was lacking, had negative feelings about, like, oh, such and such didn't come to my opening.
Mm.
Such and such showed up for my daughter. And that's all that matters. So yeah, that's my spiel on just gratitude, and using social media as a way to, make people aware of what she was experiencing.
Yeah, and I read your post. I know you had mentioned in it that you guys, you and Neon and the family are reading through those comments. And what has it been like? What has her sort of reaction been reading through some of that support, and how's that been helping keep her going and feel inspired during this time?
I think the only fear and apprehension Neon had was before her surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she had come in, she had some mobility issues, and she was in physical therapy. And her physical therapist noticed that it seemed to be a bit more serious than mobility issues. And she gave us a referral to neurology. We thought nothing of it. Like the
Mm-hmm.
morning of Valentine's Day, her dad came to pick her up. He had gotten her like a cute little balloon. We thought nothing of it. She had her lunch pack. She's like, I'm going to school after this. I'm having my Valentine's Day party. And they went in, and like within an hour, maybe longer, I had like 17 missed calls. And they're like, you have to pack a bag. Like they want to admit her for an MRI. And I'm like, what? And I lost both of my parents like 1 year after another. My father died from cancer. My mom was a bit different, it wasn't cancer, but she had her own host of issues and, declining health. And like I had PTSD. I'm like, I can't pack her bag. Like I pack her bag, she's never gonna come home. So like her dad came over and we had a difficult conversation. And I'm like, I think something is like seriously wrong. I just have a feeling. But we still wanted to maintain optimism, especially for her. But we both had moments where we're super emotional. To her, like going into the hospital was an exciting thing. She had a private room. They're like, oh, you have room service, you have a TV. So she's in there and she's like, I've got the sweet life. And I see her
Yeah.
dad like tearing up, and I'm like, oh my God, like, and at this point, still not knowing what to expect, but just like knowing deep down, like this has to be something.
Mm.
So she had her MRI the next day, and a lot of things happened that were really serendipitous, like getting her in for an MRI right away, the physical therapist, knowing that something was wrong, seeing things that we hadn't noticed as her parents. And, we got news that it was an abnormal MRI, but we didn't know what that means. Because I mean,
Mhm.
abnormal could be anything. It could be like they need to do it again. They didn't get what they needed.
Mm.
And her neurosurgeon, who wound up being one of her, primaries, happened to be at Children's Hospital that day because he had taken his daughter to the ER. So again, serendipity, like things aligning in a really particular way. So he was able to speak to us right away and said, unfortunately, this is malignant. We will need, to do surgery to remove the tumor. So it was like a lot of information all at once. We were prepping for the surgery, and that was the only time she had any sort of fear. She was like, I'm nervous
Uh,
because we weren't sure what to tell her because we didn't know how bad it was. So it was tentatively saying like, hey, you know, all your issues you've been having, they're going to do surgery to fix it. And the surgery is going to be in your brain. And that was the extent of what she knew.
Okay.
And she did, you know, there was fear and anxiety. But since then, she's just been like, okay. And I really
Yeah.
think she gets it from her grandma. Her grandma's from Queens. Her grandma
Okay.
had a cancer diagnosis, and she was like, I'm either going to survive or I'm not. Like, I'm not, you know, about to break down about it. And I really think that Neon has that attitude and is just like, we're going to deal with whatever it is. And she's been incredible, you know, having to tell her, like, you have cancer, you're going to need a year of treatment. And she's just, I mean, she's incredible. I can't even, like, I've cried so many times. This girl maybe cried like once in the hospital. It's just
Yeah.
amazing.
Happening? What was going on where you noticed things weren't right, that she was in physical therapy? Like, take me to the beginning with this.
She was one of those kids that got really tall really fast. We call her like a baby giraffe. And that had to do with precocious puberty, which is essentially a hormone thing that Black children in particular are, you know, kind of predisposed to experiencing. So she was in physical therapy for that, just to get control over her mobility. We managed to like resolve some of the issues and kind of like stop her growth where it needed to stop before we had to maybe consider like a hormone regimen or anything like that. So she had stopped going to physical therapy because we saw some improvement. And then we noticed like some clumsiness. She had started to have like falls around the house, like shakiness in her legs, which we really just assumed was regression because she had not been in physical therapy consistently. In retrospect, there were more things that we noticed because like I've been sitting in retrospect because even as a parent,
Yeah.
you're like, how could I not know? But there were just things where we would not have assumed it had to do with a brain tumor. So yeah, the shakiness, the instability, clumsiness. She was experiencing nausea, which was unusual for her, but like I'm a chronically nauseous person. So I'm like, oh, maybe she got my nausea, but that is an indicator of a tumor. Um, her eye movements were a little off. And I remember noticing that and thinking like, oh, my baby has a lazy eye. That's okay. She's still cute. Like, who cares? You
Yeah.
know? And things that we would not have immediately assumed. But her dad, you know, Neon is his first child and she's my second. So, you know, I don't worry as much. I'm like, oh, I'll give her some Tylenol. She'll be fine. But like if she
Mhm.
coughs wrong, he's like, I'm taking her to Children's. So he was like, I'm going to get her back in physical therapy. I'm afraid of her getting hurt. And that was a real fear for both of us, especially because she was starting to have more falls and, you know, things could have gotten bad. And her physical therapist, who was like brand new to her career in her 20s, like a newlywed,
Yeah.
she told me later on, because when we got the diagnosis, I was like, I've got to meet this girl. Like, she could have saved our child's life. And she was incredible. She's like, you know, I only met with Neon 3 times, but like, she really made an impression on me. She's such a sweet girl. And she said, I could not let go of the idea that something else was going on. And she said, I spoke to my colleagues, and, you know, that's why I gave you guys a referral. And she did say, you know, I appreciate you crediting me, but as parents, she said, you would be surprised how many people do not follow up on referrals. And the fact that we did
Mhm.
that, which is really her dad, you know, being overprotective. And I brushed that off so many times, like within the 9 years we've had her, like, oh, you're so overprotective, you worry too much. But that is really the thing that saved her, that and her physical therapist, you know, noticing things that we didn't.
Yeah. Do you know how far along she was with cancer, and did it have something to do with the amount of hormones that she was producing? Is there some sort of link there?
We did consider that. What she had is meduloblastoma, which is, you know, a grade 4 tumor, no matter what. It's very aggressive, one of the most aggressive cancer types. Um, and we did consider that, you know, because in some cases it can cause like spontaneous growth, things like that. So we did consider the possibility that maybe when she had scans previously, they missed something.
Mhm.
But, you know, I don't know that it would have made a difference because, you know, a crystal ball could have told us Neon's going to get brain cancer. and there's nothing we could have done about it. It's just a thing that happens. They don't know exactly why it happens to kids. There are genetic components, but it's one of those things that there just like isn't enough information about in terms of onset. So no, we really don't think it was anything like that. It's just a roll of the die, just a
Yeah.
super unfortunate, unexpected thing. But it was not caught as early as her neurosurgeon would have liked, but still
Okay.
another thing we're so fortunate for. A lot of kids, it's not discovered until things progress to where they are having really bad headaches, really intense nausea. A lot of times, this cancer is aggressive, so it metastasizes, and it's not caught until it starts to impact the central nervous system. And we
Mhm.
got her in exactly on time for the best
Good.
prognosis. And
Good.
we are just like so, so grateful because even, she was able to wait a few days before she even had her surgery. And so many nurses said, it's so great to see her like this because by the time we usually see kids for this surgery, they are really bad off. And
Yeah.
similarly to her coming out of surgery, it's a miracle. Like the next day, she was up and like doing things, and within a week was ready for physical therapy. Her strength is like astounding.
Wow. How long was she experiencing some of those symptoms, by the way?
A few weeks, I would say, but again, in retrospect, there were definitely because I sit in retrospect. Even today, I was telling her dad, like, I remember I was yelling at Nene because she was in trouble, and the shakiness, the uneven eye movements, and the instability was the most prominent thing. Like, she could not walk a straight line, and the fatigue, she would get
Mhm.
exhausted really easily, and that was definitely within a few weeks of us taking her to children's and finding out about everything. She would come downstairs from school and like lay in my bed and be like, oh, I'm so tired. I'd be like, girl, you just don't want to go to school, like get
Yeah.
up. But no, fatigue is a symptom of this, that we didn't make the connection. And there's so much guilt, but also like you would never ever expect something like that.
No. Is her treatment over? Is it ongoing? She had the surgery, and is there continued treatment?
Yes, because surgery did remove the tumor. They leave a small, like slight percentage. And that's because where it grows in the cerebellum, it's very close to the brain stem. And, any brain surgery has cognitive impacts. So to reduce some of those cognitive impacts, they don't remove the whole tumor, but they remove
Okay.
enough of it to where, the tumor likely will not grow. But because it's aggressive, it necessitates a year of treatment. So we'll be leaving this week. She'll have 6 weeks of radiation in Philadelphia at CHOP. And, that's a really incredible hospital. They work very closely with children's, and everything is working together as a team to coordinate the first parts of her treatment. And we opted into this particular treatment because this radiation is more targeted and
Mhm.
can reduce long-term cognitive impacts. Unfortunately, because this is brain cancer, when it's all said and done, she will be different. We don't know the significance of how different she will be, but we're advocating and we're choosing the best options, the best course of treatment. And when that wraps up, she will come back to Pittsburgh and do outpatient chemo at Children's.
Okay, so people definitely are going to want to stay in contact with you and lend you some support. How can they do that?
I'm always on Instagram. I don't know like if people are watching, but we're really fortunate to where her father and I were still able to work. We have an incredible support system. We're able to navigate, being in Philly for an extended period of time. So the only thing we asked for was like we had Nene make an Amazon wish list. I posted it on my Instagram. Within a week, people had bought everything on the wish
Wow.
list. We were just like, because our logic was, we're so fortunate to not need financial support. Let's do something that will ensure like Nene has joy and comfort while she's going through this treatment. And people have asked like what else they can do. So I think when she starts chemo, maybe her needs will look a little bit different. She can make another list. But I mean, social media is like, people are incredible. And just if anyone's on there that bought Nene something, thank you so much. She's so grateful and just like, she can't believe it. She's like, wow, really? Like all these people like me? So
Oh,
we're blessed.
what's your Instagram for people to?
Ms. Tara Fay.
Okay, cool. And we'll try to drop this in the comments or something too, so that people can copy paste it or whatever. So, well, we wish you guys the best. First of all, thank you for coming on and sharing this with us. And I know your story is going to inspire so many people. And so thank you for that. And we wish you guys the best of luck. And hopefully we'll be talking again with good news sometime down the road. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you guys, for many people, healthcare is just scary. I'm sure, some of the things that you heard this evening so far have probably been scary to you in some way. You don't know where to go, who to turn to. So there's actually a group of nurses who are trying to engage the community to help with some of those issues and help people gain a better understanding. We want to welcome our next guest, Joanne Boyd. Joanne Boyd is the president of the Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action. It's a local chapter of the National Black Nurses Association. It's an organization of nurses with a commonality of sharing health promotion to the public. Pittsburgh Black Nurses in Action provides education on disease processes that affect the community. So we want to welcome Joanne. Hey, Joanne.
Thank you.
So first of all, welcome. Are there any statistics that you think right off the bat people need to know about regarding cancer in Allegheny County? I know we touched on them a little bit at the top of this show, but were there any that you wanted to share with us?
Sure. Thank you for that. So with this month being Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month, I thought I could touch a little bit on colorectal cancer statistics. And that is that 1 in 26 women will be diagnosed with colorectal cancer and 1 in 26 men, 1 in 24 men. And the one statistic that kind of stands out a little bit more now is that we are seeing colorectal cancer occur more in both men and women under the age of 50. In terms of race, we see that the Native American Indian and as the Alaskan Native, they are the ones that have the highest rates of colorectal cancer, and that's followed by African American men and women. So we also look at some of our statistics related to breast cancer, and breast cancer we know is diagnosed in a more aggressive state. Typically with an African-American women, they are more typically to die of breast cancer, and they are more so than their white counterparts are seen more to have the more aggressive type of triple negative breast cancer.
So with the ages that people are sort of being diagnosed, shifting with like colorectal cancer specifically, I mean, are age requirements or recommendations changing around that too for tests and screenings?
So the screenings, we look at the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force guidelines and the American Cancer Society, and they look at the average person. So for the average person for, say, colorectal cancer screening, that just started at age 45. But the thing you have to keep in mind, it's always important to talk to your healthcare provider to just make sure you don't have any genetic risk, any other types of risks associated with your lifestyle and behavior that might make you more prone to be at risk for cancer, whether that be colorectal, whether that be breast, whether that be lung, cervical cancer, to name a few. So there are guidelines to follow, but you need to be having that conversation with your doctor for each specific cancer.
Okay. So with, all of that, what kind of screenings are available to people? And, are there any ones that are sort of, I guess maybe like easier, or any way to sort of detect on a grand scale if you might be at risk without maybe testing for each individual strain of cancer?
Sure. So it is going to be depending on what type of screening what type of cancer you're screening for. So there's not like one test that's going to kind of do it all for you. Okay. But there are different tests within each type. So if we look at colorectal cancer screening, there are different types of screening tests that you can have. The colonoscopy is going to be your gold standard. That's where they're going to stick a tube down to take an exam, look at your colon and rectum, and they can see when they do that exam in a clinical setting, are there any polyps or anything going on along the lining of the colon? And what we always promote is that early detection saves lives. So if you can get your screenings done and detect cancer before it has a chance to spread or before it has a chance to be a higher stage of cancer, you have an opportunity to have better treatment options. You also have an opportunity to have better outcomes. So if we look at the colorectal cancer as an example, colorectal cancer can be found in either the colon or the rectum, where it gets its name. And it often starts as a polyp, and it's on the lining of the colon. Every polyp that occurs or that's found there doesn't necessarily turn into cancer. However, if you have a colonoscopy, there's an opportunity for them to remove that polyp before it has a chance to become cancer. Because when you think in terms of cancer, cancer is occurring because the cells in our body that normally are there to function and help us to have healthy lifestyle, the cells in cancer, the cancerous cells, they are gone awry. They are dividing faster. They are not following any of the rules that they should be following to keep us healthy. And so we want to try to get those cells before they have a chance to do all the destruction that they can do. When you think in terms of something like screening for breast cancer, that typically would be your mammogram. But again, if you're somebody that has a family history of breast cancer, if you have some type of genetic symptoms that are genetic, genetic tendencies that would make you more prone to a breast cancer, you might need to start your breast cancer screening earlier. Typically, you would start at age 40 for the average person. But if you are somebody with those types of genetic disorders or family histories, you might have to start a little sooner.
Okay. What kind of questions do you think people should be asking their doctors in regards to all of this?
So I think you start first with knowing your body, making sure that you are aware of what your body normally typically looks like, feels like, whether that's, a mole on your skin, whether that's a lump or a certain feel that you have in your breast or any part of your body. And then you want to ask your doctor, based on my history, based on my medical history, what type of screening is best for me? How often should I get that screening? What are the side effects of the screenings that I might choose to get? I think the most informed person is the best advocate for yourself and for your health.
And if people are listening to this and they're like, okay, I want to go do my own research or, learn some more information, is there anywhere that you sort of recommend people go for that?
So we certainly would recommend, with this day and age, our computer is our friend, but it also can be challenging for us if we're getting misinformation. So we would encourage people to use those reputable sites that are basing their information on scientific data and not just, myths and things that you might hear that may not be realistic or based on science. So when you think in terms of the American Cancer Society, the National Cancer Institute, those are reputable sites that we would suggest that people take a look at if they're looking for more information.
Yeah, and with this too, is there anything that you can say to people that would sort of help them find a good balance between, being on top of it, being assertive, and knowing what's happening with their body, versus kind of the opposite, where a lot of people they get online and they're on like WebMD and they're diagnosing themselves and they're freaking out. What's a good place to be? What's a good in-between area for that? Because you notice people have like kind of some healthy concern and then like unhealthy concern where they're like, in shambles and they haven't even been diagnosed yet.
Yeah, so I think that, having that good, trusted provider, that healthcare provider, knowing somebody that you trust. If you don't have that provider yet that is one that you can trust and you're searching, then who is that trusted family member, that trusted friend of yours that you can go to and say, hey, I need to talk to a doctor about this. Who might you recommend? Because you want to have that conversation where somebody is focused on you, focused on your symptoms, focused on your history, and what might be the best treatment course for you or the best test for you.
Is there anything else that we missed that you really wanted to drive home with people tonight?
I think that if you look at cancer prevention. We know that we don't have a cure for cancer. We know that we can't necessarily prevent cancer, but we can minimize the risk of getting cancer. So I would encourage everybody to be taking a good look at their health. What kinds of foods are we eating? Are we taking time to exercise? Everybody's exercise pattern isn't going to be the same, but we do know that some amount of activity is better than no activity at all. We also know that things like processed foods, red meats, are linked to some of the cancers, such as colorectal cancer. So you want to start with a healthy diet. You want to limit your alcohol intake. You want to look at, if you are somebody that smokes, you want to take a look, is there that an opportunity for me to consider, is something that I want to maybe change? Is that something that I want to either cut back on or quit smoking altogether? A lot of times people think that, if you smoke, you're going to get cancer, or that is the only way you get lung cancer. But the other thing to keep in mind is secondhand smoke also can lead to lung cancer as well. So if you think about quitting smoking, maybe not just for yourself, but maybe others that you love. And there's also third-hand smoke. When you are smoking in your environment and you have the smoke, the residue that stays on your clothing, that may stay on your furniture, may stay on toys, on pet toys, there's oftentimes little ones in the house that may be picking up those toys and putting them in their mouth. There are pets that could be picking up those toys and putting them in their mouth. So it's important that we think of doing these things for ourselves, but also for the ones that we care most about.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Joanne, for talking with us tonight. I hope that people were able to walk away with something from this, and I think they will. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So our next guest is a reason why it's very important to understand what cancer is and how it impacts them. We're talking about Dr. Cheryl Hall-Russell. Dr. Cheryl Hall-Russell is an esteemed strategist and public speaker, yet she, like so many other Black women, found themselves with a cancer diagnosis. To talk about her experience as well as the link of cancer to some hair care products, let's go ahead and welcome Dr. Cheryl. Hi, Dr. Cheryl.
Hey, you. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I just want to express some gratitude right away, though, to your prior guest, Tara Fay and Joanne Boyd. I mean, it's so many angles that you guys are bringing in, and it is just really good to hear their stories. And all of us have a story, both as advocates and, unfortunately, sometimes as patients and as caregivers. And so getting the whole aspect of this cancer journey is super important. So I really appreciate them.
Yes. And, you've, like we mentioned, had your own journey. You're a survivor. So talk to us about that. Take us to the beginning and tell us about your diagnosis.
Minding my own business. And everybody knows I love to travel. I had just gotten back from Tanzania. I was living my best life. I run my own business. I was feeling great. But I started to have some symptoms. And I'm a woman of age. And there were some things that should not have been happening that were happening. And I was like, and I was going in saying, I'm seeing some blood. And I had my typical tests, the screening tests that she talked about, especially for cervical cancer, those annual tests. I'd gone in for that. Everything was clean, but I'm still having a little bit of blood. And so and I'm just talking about this straight open because I'm not shying away from any of these topics. It's reality. And I want people to hear me. And so the other piece was they kept pushing me off. I don't know what this is. Why don't you come back in a few months? And I was like, no. And the last time my doctor said, let's look at this again in 6 months. And I said, no, I will be back in 2 weeks. And she was kind of looking at me like I was being paranoid, like I was, and I felt that I got that look. And so I immediately just got on the phone and called a GYN myself and made an appointment. And I made an appointment with the brown woman because, I'm a researcher and I've done some study work around how we are treated and Black women are treated in these doctors' offices, and they weren't listening to me. And so I found a brown woman, walked in, and she said, "Where's your biopsy?" And I said, "I haven't had one." And she said, "What?" And within 5 days, she had me in AGH at West Penn, did the biopsy. And unfortunately, I went online to check about a shoulder injury to look at the results of a MRI and noticed that my tests were back. And she had told me everything was pink and looked normal. And I'm like, let me look at this. And as soon as I opened it, it said serous carcinoma. And I flipped out. No lie, for the next 4 or 5 hours, I could not hear or see because the terror was real. But, you know, once I kind of got myself back together, you know, I realized it was a very aggressive type of cancer. So I didn't know if it had spread at that point. I didn't know anything. But I knew that I waited and not been my own, you know, being a self-advocate, that this thing could have taken my life.
And your treatment, talk to us about that. And this was back in 2023, your diagnosis, right?
August of 2023. Yeah. So it's they first had to, you know, go in and they did PET scans. They want to see where active cancer cells are. So there's dyes in your body. And I'm just fascinated with cancer medicine. It is amazing. And I think I have had excellent care. I did not like my first oncologist. It wasn't because he wasn't talented as a medical professional. He just was not a communicator. And so you have to understand as a patient what you need. And one of the things that I needed was somebody that was going to look me in my eye, talk to me about my diagnosis, and provide encouragement. And I wasn't getting that from him. And so we scheduled the surgery that October. He did it. It was successful. And shortly thereafter, I switched oncologists to someone I could relate to better. He was giving me I was a stage 1 cancer, which is about the earliest that you could find it. But he kept saying things like, you've got a 50% chance this is going to come back. Well, when I moved to a new oncologist, I found out he was giving me the absolute smallest percentage. And she said, you've got a 95% chance that you will never hear about this at all. She said, it's 95% because I'm not going to give you 100 because that's not how cancer works. And so after that, I immediately went into chemo because of the type. It's called serous carcinoma. It's very aggressive. And so they wanted to make sure there were no, you know, cells hiding out anywhere in lymph nodes. And so chemo was no joke. I had to have recommended was between 3 treatments of one scientific study, 6 on another. They went with 6. I ended up having 5. And it was rough. It is when you know who your circle is. It is when you put the clarion call out, and my folks showed up, both family and friends. They took on different aspects from feeding me to going to chemo. My big brother came down from Ithaca, New York, and my sister from Indianapolis. They didn't miss a treatment. My daughter did the last, you know, couple too. And so I just was never, they didn't overdo it, but I was never alone going through those treatments. And then I had a very quick month of radiation in April of last year. And so I'm coming up on a year of no more treatment, only going to my oncologist now every 6 months.
Nice. Is there anything about, you know, your journey or any information that you learned along the way that surprised you or shocked you in any kind of way?
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, what kind of cancer? Mine was endometrial, which is the lining of the uterus. And I was just trying to figure, where the hell did this come from? You know, there was a part of me that, you know, we started doing all this stuff around genetics, and they did all this genetic testing. And there was nothing that would have indicated that I would have gotten this until we started talking about hair care products. People who know me know I used to have this much hair. And as a kid in particular, it was so heavy and thick. We started perming probably at 12 or 13 years old. And it wasn't until the last few years they started making these connections between hair perms and cancer, ovarian, endometrial. It is highly increased for Black women. And so I am no physician, nor am I a lawyer. I don't want to say too much about this because I am involved in a lawsuit around this right now. But they are very clear. The New York Times did a very extensive story on this, and these African-American physicians who and researchers who made that connection very clear with a huge group of Black women they were tracking. And at least I was a little bit older, you know, I was over 50 getting it. What was sad to me reading those articles is so many of those women in their 30s and in their 40s. Some of them had not even begun to have their children yet here they were with these cancers. And so I want to just bring awareness to that. You know, I want to leave you with, be aware around the cancers around the hair perming. Hair braiding now, Consumer Reports has just put out a study on the braid hair that we are using that is as toxic as anything you will ever see. And Yeah, the braid hair is horrific. So Consumer Reports, and it is starting to spread. This just came out a couple of months ago. I didn't do a lot of braiding, but I had my share of braids as well. And so, the things that we love and embrace, we love our hair, we love doing different stuff to it, but we have to be a lot more careful with looking at the ingredients of that stuff. And I know it sounds super scientific. Hair products are killing us. And we have got to take that in. The other thing is listening to your body. I knew my body was off. I didn't feel bad. I just knew things were happening. And when people weren't listening in the way I think they needed to, I saw different ears.
Yeah.
And so until I got an answer. And so I need people to have that confidence in their own thoughts about their bodies so that they are become their best advocates. And we save our own lives sometimes. And don't be so afraid that you just don't go in. You have to know so you can treat. And the treatment was not easy. I've never been that tired in my life. Going through chemo was one of the toughest things I've ever experienced. But I'm alive and I'm cancer free. And I'm able to talk about this. I went on Facebook, and not in the beginning, I was ringing my bell on Facebook. And that was the first time my friends, the broader community knows me, knew. Not because I was embarrassed. I wasn't ready to talk about it at that time broadly. Number two, I was working for myself. I was afraid people were thinking that I couldn't anymore when I was able to continue to work. So there, but in a way I wished I'd shared a little bit earlier. Some of my friends did. And I think our journeys online have been so helpful to people with new diagnosis. They know who to talk to. And that community is growing here in the Pittsburgh region of us who are willing to share our stories to help others.
And also, you mentioned seeking other ears, and how do you how would you give people sort of that same courage to speak up? Because when you have somebody that is, degreed down, who has been, maybe a doctor for a very long time, whatever in the medical profession, and they're telling you, don't worry about it, but something's not right. How do you find that courage to speak up and be like, no, something's wrong. And if you're not going to help me out, I'm going to find, someone else to talk to.
Doctors are people too, and don't be intimidated. If it means you start to think about the people around you, your children, your parents, your friends, the people you want to see get grown. I have a daughter who is 22, and there's a lot I want to see her do. That makes you start to become your own best advocate. These folks can make mistakes. My primary care doctor has yet to say anything to me about the fact that she missed this. And I will be looking for a new one because I'm still, I thought I was going to see her for my regular appointment, and she put me off to somebody else when it was last time for me to go through. So I was like, okay, sis, I see you, and I won't be seeing you anymore because you weren't good for me. And so this whole doctor intimidation, this thing, they know best, seek them out. But if something is continuing and nobody's giving you the right answer, then, figure out what your insurance is going to allow you to do for second opinions. I immediately went to look at my Highmark, and I was like, okay, who else? Can I see somebody else? Do I have to stay? I was willing to pay cash for it if I had to see somebody else. Luckily, I didn't have to do that. But I also began to talk to other people and say, is this happening to you? What and I started to open up a little bit, and folks are like, girl, you better go and see somebody. And so, but I'm also tenacious as hell. And I absolutely knew my body was off. I was working out. I was a vegan. I was lifting weights. I was doing all the things because Cheryl liked to have fun. She liked to travel. But still, and I don't eat poorly. I like a bourbon or two, but I am not a heavy drinker. I've never smoked. But I knew something was wrong. So please listen to yourselves. Your intuition will save your life.
Yeah. Do you share your journey online anywhere that people can connect with you in some sort of way?
And not specifically this, but you can find out things about it if you're on Facebook with me. I am Dr. What am I? Dr. Cheryl PTH, I think, on TikTok. I am on TikTok, believe it or not. And so I do a lot of things about that. And I have been open about it there. Do a lot of political stuff that nobody wants to see. And also I'm on Instagram. And so it is Dr. C. Hall-Russell on Instagram. And just small bits, but not as much as when I was in treatment. But I am open to anybody who wants to inbox me that wants to talk. again, I'm a doctor of education, not medicine. And so, but I am very happy to share my story and my journey and be supportive. And so, yeah. And your next guest went to the physician with me, my first appointment, and the importance of having people like that who have your back. She had words when I couldn't create words because of fear. And so it was so incredibly helpful at the beginning of this journey. And then she was there at the end when we celebrated with a big old birthday party, and just the blessings and the gratitude for getting to the other side of this.
Yes. Well, Dr. Cheryl, thank you so much for sharing your story and speaking candidly, you know, about some of these issues. And congratulations too on ringing the bell.
Oh, thank you. Just get your health, folks. Get your health, maintain it. I started lifting a lot more weights after this was over. And I am heading to my 5th continent next month. Wow. It's my birthday, and it's a Free from Cancer celebration. And I'm going to spend a month in Colombia, and I am going to celebrate and be so grateful forever. And I'm grateful for the journey, believe it or not. I've learned so much about who I am. And I feel anybody who's been through this has something to share.
Yeah. Well, so thank you so much. Yes, of course. Thank you. And also, you know, in addition to the products that we use, sometimes there are environmental factors that can also be a contributor to increased risk of cancer. So,
Pittsburgh.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so we do want to welcome our next guest, who you know very well, as you mentioned, Dani Wilson. Dani, thanks for being here with us this evening. As Dr. Cheryl was mentioning, you were there for the very sort of inception of her journey. So can you talk first what it was like for you to be along for that ride with her, and to sort of be that like affirming hand when talking to doctors and things of that nature?
Sure, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me here. Excuse me. It was a gift. I know Cheryl has always expressed gratitude for her community, her circle, her friends who rallied around her, and hopefully most people have folks like that. But to be invited in to such a vulnerable and tender space when somebody's experiencing terror, as she said, it is a gift. So it was a really beautiful time, and I was just happy to be there with her and for her.
Yeah, and so you, Dani, are an environmental organizer, the executive director of the Cancer Environmental Network of Southwestern Pennsylvania. Your work centers around helping organizations understand how to reduce the use of toxic chemicals that are linked to cancer. So can you first of all talk to us a little bit about your organization and your work there?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been talking about it all night without necessarily knowing we're talking about it. I heard Cheryl say that hair products are killing us. It's the chemicals in the hair products, right? And I heard her say that one of the reasons she didn't talk publicly earlier is the fear of losing work. Capitalism is killing us. Capitalism is making the hair products, making sure it's all about profit first and not about human health or health of the planet. So that's why we're here as a network. We want to end exposure to toxic chemicals that contribute to cancer. So it's about primary prevention for us before cancer happens, because cancer is not inevitable. Industry and capitalism tells us it is. They tell us we need to sacrifice our health and our lives and our children to have jobs or a successful economy, and that's not true. So our network has over 50 organizations in the region and some individual members as well. And we do our work through 4 teams. We have a science team, healing and justice, government action, and collective action.
And so regionally here in Southwestern Pennsylvania, when we talk about those risks and those chemicals, what are we looking at here? What are we talking about?
Yeah, so environmental risk factors for cancer include pollutants in the air and water, pesticides, and contaminants in consumer products, which includes things that we buy, right? Personal hair care or personal care products, cleaning products, chemicals in furniture, etc. Some of the pollutants associated with cancer you may have heard of include microplastics, PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, and diesel particulate. And all of these exposures are more widespread and have disproportionate impacts on vulnerable populations and communities, particularly communities with a higher population of people with the global majority, and with more people living near the federal poverty line. But specifically here in this region, there are 6 types of cancer that have both strong links to toxic chemicals and are more prevalent, like a higher cancer incidence in Allegheny County as compared with national rates, sometimes as much as 50% higher here. And those 6 cancers are bladder, breast, kidney, lung, leukemia, and thyroid.
So what are the environmental factors that are driving that?
Yeah, so if we focus on just air pollution and lung cancer, right? The links we see between those. So in Allegheny County, both Black men and Black women have higher rates of lung cancer than white men and women. So you can see the racial disparities of cancers we've talked about tonight include those cancers linked to environmental toxics. And Joanne mentioned the smoking, the secondhand smoke, the thirdhand smoke, which is all very true. And it's about more than smoking, especially here where we are. And there's a really startling statistic that drives this home. If everyone in the country stopped smoking overnight, there's no more smoking. On average, the incidence of lung cancer would reduce by 62%. So that's telling us that smoking is causing a whole lot of lung cancer. In Allegheny County, our lung cancer incidence would only be reduced by about 11%. So that tells us there's a lot more going into lung cancer here than smoking. Radon is certainly a factor, which is a naturally occurring odorless gas. But there's some research. The research that I just cited is from some folks that are participating in the network, and they'll be publishing another study this spring to kind of dig into why that is here in Allegheny County, and will really show just how heavy air pollution factors into those things.
And so is there anything that we can do at home to sort of safeguard ourselves in the best way possible from some of these risks?
Yeah, there's so many, and all the different cancers, they might have different environmental risk factors to them. There's a lot we can do as individuals, and I will be happy to share a few of them. But I do want to note, first off, that we cannot individually solve the problem that corporate greed and the capitalism's devaluing of life has created. So we can help. There's a lot we can do. It's great to have agency, but we also need policy changes. And we know the federal government is not only not supporting this right now, but is actively fighting against the health of our planet and our people. So we can right now act on a state and local level. We can advocate for bans on plastic bags, straws, utensils, styrofoam containers. Federal environmental justice agencies are being shut down. They're being closed down all over. So right now, we can support our state environmental justice agencies and demand that they stay open and they take action. So right now, the network is asking people to sign on to a letter asking Governor Shapiro to do just that. I think it might pop up in the chat for you. But as individuals, yeah, we can work to reduce our individual exposure. We can do a lot by reducing our plastics consumption, eliminating single-use plastics as much as possible. Those plastics just break down and break down and break down, even in the landfills, into smaller pieces, and they remain. Replacing your plastic cutting board with a wood cutting board, never cooking with plastic in the microwave, removing your hot food from plastic containers as soon as possible, using canvas or cotton bags instead of the reusable plastic ones. And if you need a new piece of clothing, this is one after 5 years of being really heavily into environmental carcinogenesis. I'm finally starting to try to focus on buying natural fiber clothing, because when you wash synthetic fabrics, microplastics can be created in the laundry cycle.
Wow. So those are some things that we can do. And that laundry thing is shocking because I was not aware of that either. Well, and on that, yeah, I mean, and do you notice, like I haven't gone, shopping, on that side of it. Like I haven't been looking for natural fibers. So price wise, like, is it more expensive to sort of shop that way? Because like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, is that like economic for people?
It can be. I mean, we're looking for cotton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which can be quite affordable. Linen, wool, if you can handle it, it's too itchy for me. But there's definitely a range. But I do want to know, that's such a great question. A lot of times our cleaning products can be cheaper. I make a lot of my own products now, both personal care and cleaning products. But even if you're purchasing them, there is this part of the narrative is that it's more expensive to go clean. And it certainly can be. Like, the clean beauty care industry is making a lot of money. Yeah. But it isn't always that way. And at the network, we have a program called Healthy Spaces, where we help smaller nonprofits and entities transform their space into a healthier place for their community. And they save money doing it. So that's office supplies, art supplies if your building has them, cleaning products, things like that. We help people trade out for cleaner, safer alternatives that actually are cheaper.
Nice. Are there any companies or businesses of note that you can mention that are sort of taking advantage of that service?
Yeah, so the one that comes to mind right off the bat, they are expensive, and that's the personal beauty care that I just mentioned. But there's a site called Credo, CREDO, credo.com. Everything they have, I really trust. They have a high level of transparency for every product, but they also won't sell things. The threshold to have a product on their site is higher than the European Union's, and the European Union does a much better job than our country in making sure that there are not harmful chemicals in our products.
Yeah. Do you feel like if, legislators aren't listening and government agencies are not listening to people about our concerns regarding the environment and exposure to harsh chemicals, is it like within our best interest to maybe start like shifting our attention to the companies and corporations and businesses and like reaching out to them directly too? Like, have you noticed, that movement happening? Is that a thing? Like, should we be doing that?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. They're going to respond to how they make money, right? And there are some, to answer your other question further, seventh generation, we've met with their executives, and they have some pretty good products. There is an what do you call it? Not an app, but on Chrome where you add an extension called Clearia. We've met with the Clearia folks, and if you install that extension as you're shopping, if it has a harmful chemical, it'll pop up a warning to let you know. So there are definitely some options out there of corporations who are both making money and finding safer alternatives or help us do this. Mm-hmm. One of the issues with going directly to the corporations is we have to meet the threshold of it's going to be more advantageous for them to do this unless they have a mission component like seventh generation. And when there's legislation, like take for example California, they have much better protections regarding environmental chemicals. It's a big state with a lot of consumer demand. So we're going to benefit from that in one way, because a company is going to have to comply with their state legislation. The continued products that they make will be better for us. However, Pennsylvania, when we don't have the same legislation, the same protections, we can become a dumping ground for those older products. And this includes things with PFAS. We can so we're actually more at risk if our state legislature is not keeping up with other states.
Wow. So where do those things go? Where do they land? In like Targets and Walmarts? Or are they in, like sort of like the secondhand, like was it like Ollie's and places like that? Like, where are we seeing those just sort of discarded products?
I haven't looked at this stat in a while, so I might get it not quite right, but one really devastating thing that we learned a couple years ago is that there was a study done on products at dollar stores. Over 50% of them had carcinogens of the products that were tested in dollar stores.
Wow.
And it seems, people living in poverty and Black and brown people are not only not protected, sometimes it seems as if they're targeted, of course, for where these products end up.
Wow. So with all of this said tonight, I mean, is there a checklist, that you would recommend to us if we decide we want to sort of do everything that we can, knowing that we're not so certain that we can trust the powers that be to make the right choice? Is there a checklist of things that we can do for ourselves to sort of remove ourselves from harm with this stuff?
Yeah, probably. We don't have one. We could make one. One of the problems with this is clearly it's very overwhelming and it's very scary. And it's not our responsibility, right? This should be the government protecting us. It should be the corporations, not being so cavalier with our lives, but it is on us. So a lot of times there's just like small snippets of information and even small snippets of what people can do, because it can be paralyzing. Like I said, I'm a social worker, but I came into this environmental carcinogen work 5 years ago, and I'm just now starting to look at my clothing. And that's okay. Like, we have to give grace to ourselves and to each other for just doing the best we can, and taking it a little bit at a time.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, was it a Chrome extension?
Yeah.
So can we use that like a daily thing that it'll showcase anything that might be like toxic to us? So, like, what is that again? Is it free? Like, how do we use that?
It's free. It's called Clearya, Clearya. And yeah, anytime you're shopping, I'm not sure if they have an agreement with certain entities. I don't think so. I think in most any shopping cart, they'll just be it's like red or orange, so you can notice it. A little warning pops up. It'll tell you exactly what chemical is in that product that is harmful. Don't think it tells you why, but I could be wrong about that.
Okay. And also just back to the sort of the more environmental factors, because those are things that we can do, I suppose, economically to protect ourselves. But, what if we are in one of those areas that does have sort of those higher statistics of air pollution? We can't afford to just up and move. What do those people do?
Yeah, so air filters, indoor air filters are really great. There's a lot of organizations within our network that provide air filters for folks that provide monitors, so people can actually monitor the pollution going on in their own home. There's an organization called ROCIS, ROCIS. We don't know what the acronym stands for at this moment. They have really phenomenal cohorts that go year round, and they're just now advertising for their summer. I think they'll have 2 cohorts this summer. It's an 8-week cohort, and they provide all of the equipment you need to monitor your home. They teach you how to use it. They teach you how to read the data and help figure out, how to mitigate it on the back end. There are also organizations that will help with radon testing and how to mitigate it. So it's not super centrally located, possibly, but there's lots of organizations in the area that are trying to help folks with some of this.
Okay. And anything on your end that you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to this evening?
I don't think so. We're available if folks want to get involved. Like I said, we have a science team, a healing and justice team. The healing and justice team is our newest team, and it's really important because we want to start healing. We can't wait for this harm to end before we attend to that. So we're building that team. So here's a call out to everyone if they're interested in being part of that. We are looking for folks to join.
And how can people get in touch with you?
So they can reach me at my email's Dani, D-A-N-I, at CENSWPA, that's our acronym, CENSWPA.org. I'm on LinkedIn, Dani Wilson, and our website is also CENSWPA.org. That's where folks can sign up to get our resources and monthly digest and things like that.
Okay. Well, Dani, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us this evening. The things that you mentioned regarding the chemicals in the wash shocked me, and that dollar store statistic just makes me sick.
Yeah, I want to follow up because I can link the study, and I didn't have that quite top of mind. Maybe I can leave it as a comment on the YouTube video or something, so people have the correct information.
Yeah, drop it in the chat.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much, Dani. So you guys at home today, we talked about a lot of different things, some of which touch slightly on policy. And one way that we're always able to impact policies is through our vote. We tell you this all the time. As you know, there's a special election happening in March, as well as a primary election on May 20th. So make sure that you are registered to vote and that your registration is updated and current. That is all for tonight. I'm Royce Jones. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Hey everyone, it's Miracle, host of Brunch with the Black Man.
These people intend to kill me, keep me in prison.
I am so happy to announce we have season 2 of Brunch with the Black Man.
And I could never understand why my heart would race and my hands would get sweaty.
So make sure you join us as we go on this journey with Black men as they heal themselves, talking about their own journey as we eat to feed our souls.
All of my brothers have been in jail, and 3 of them have been in prison. You know what I'm saying? Of course, I've been in jail as well.
Join us for season 2 of Brunch with a Black Man.